Ryan Day showed up to the Big Ten media days looking like he was going to take off his suit coat, dress up in a football uniform, and join Ohio State's legendary defensive line. The Ryan Day that I watched at Big Ten media days just on my little Samsung Galaxy S10 5G, to me as a Michigan fan, is very intimidating and very angering to me that we, as Michigan, have let ourselves just get constantly trip over ourselves, get over our heads, and let Ohio State get these great coaches while we just kind of sit here and basically do nothing and lose. And that's what we've done for easily the past decade. But I want to go over some of what I liked about Ryan Day's, like what he said, how he answered questions from a Michigan fan perspective, and I'll get to Jim Harbaugh and James Franklin and others in other episodes. I kind of covered Paul Chryst in a Wisconsin video already, but I want to go over the Big Ten media days, and who better than to really start with Ryan Day here. And what I liked is he is very focused on that week 1 matchup against Minnesota. He's not in over his head here. He just obviously from the brief sentence or 2 or 3 that he talked about Minnesota, he obviously knows that this is a veteran team, and I presume that he believes they are better than most believe Minnesota is. I mean, you look at Minnesota and they returned the entirety of their offensive line, most of their defense. They return Mo Ibrahim, who is one of the best running backs in the Big Ten and could be the best individual running back in the entire country. Not country, Big Ten. But he could also contend for being the best running back in the entire country if he has an even better season this year than last year. I mean, he was, from what I could understand, he was the best player on the team last year besides maybe Rashad Bateman. And Mo Ibrahim would basically carry Minnesota to wins, and despite Minnesota's poor offensive line, he still did very well, rushing for several touchdowns and a good amount of yards for a short period of a COVID season. But Ryan Day is very focused on that week 1 matchup, and he's not looking too distant in the future. He's being present. He's not, he's obviously focusing on continuing to be at this elite level, but he's not overlooking the small teams. And I feel like in a certain sense, that's what Urban would do. And I think the blowout losses to Purdue, the blowout losses to Iowa, just from my limited understanding without a whole bunch of inside information, it seems that Ryan Day has kind of learned from his predecessor's mistake of maybe overlooking some of the smaller teams and really focusing, just taking it week by week with the team. And that's another thing. The week by week thing brings me to another point at point B. This man has learned from the COVID-19 pandemic in a sense that he is in his training. He talked about when he was asked a question about what did the COVID period teach you about just how to train better this coming season. And he mentioned, I believe this was his response, he mentioned fundamentals and how he's been working with his team, him and his staff, just really about the fundamentals. And he's just really been enforcing those fundamentals, and he's just trying to really keep his team on task here. And he also talked about routine. I think that was actually his response, was about routine and how they need to get a rhythm going because they really didn't have one last year with all those COVID cancellations and all that. But I really liked that his response with routine, and routine will be very helpful to Ohio State this year. I mean, last year when you have players dropping left and right because they get tested for COVID-19, there's not much you can do You just have to sit him out, and then you have to expect that a few other players will step up and perform to a similar level. And he also talked about that during his game last year against Michigan State, how he did have some guys step up when a great portion of their team was out. But yeah, he mentioned routine training fundamentals, because they actually have a large off season. Like last year you didn't really have an off season, but this year you have what seems to be a large off season, because everything seems large when you don't really have it previously. But he's really working this off season to reinforce fundamentals, especially to the younger Ohio State players, which there are 45 Ohio State players who are first and second years. That's crazy. This team is very young. Ryan Day is working with a very young team, a team that returns, according to, I believe, Fox, when I was watching the Big Ten Media Days, it read that Ohio State has the second fewest returning production in the FBS. That's insanity. That's crazy. That to me is that's mind-boggling to think about that. Like Ohio State, for the first time in forever, and I've mentioned this in several other videos, they don't have a quarterback who's thrown a collegiate pass for the first time in who knows how long. They have questionable depth at linebacker. They do have some depth at the secondary, but last year's secondary was nothing to be proud of. There's still questions surrounding that. And those are like key areas to have questions about. But at the same time, they do have a very veteran defensive line, and Ryan Day did mention that this is the fullest the defensive line has been, I believe, in his tenure. And that's a great thing. And you also have, again, that wide receiver duo in Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. And he also brought up Jeremy Ruckert and some others, I believe Haskell Garrett, and how those players returned to Ohio State and how he was proud of them for returning. His whole demeanor, and this is point C2, he clearly answered questions, and you could tell that he thought them through. And this is something that I think, like, you look at Jim Harbaugh and just others who kind of go, they're not exactly clear, or they don't really want to answer to the media, and they kind of have their own, like, they just don't want to answer certain questions. And Ryan Day wasn't like that. He was very clear, concise, specific as well. He was asked about who would start and the depth at offensive line, specifically center and the interior offensive line, and he just knew, I mean, as expected and as he should, knew the entire depth up there, and did name players that he thought were doing very well, and others that kind of came in later during the year, or like missed certain portions of the year last year, and all this stuff. So he knows what he's talking about. He's specific. He's not overlooking anything. I mean, just from how much he mentioned week one, he was even asked, like kind of going back to point A, but he was even asked, how do you get to the national championship and what do you focus on? And he just said, taking it week by week. And that's what we are all about at Ohio State. And just to bring it back to the Michigan perspective, Michigan could learn a thing or two from this. Don't overlook Michigan State in the middle of the season. Don't go up to Wisconsin after barely beating Army and expect to compete with them without severely revamping your game plan and practicing extensively against the team you're facing. And it's shameful. I am watching here a man who came in to replace a legend, a guy who won 3 national titles, won a national title at 2 different schools, commanded Florida to success in the SEC, commanded Ohio State to their probably best ever elite level in their history, besides maybe Woody Hayes, which was a completely different era of football. And he's doing as good as Urban, if not better, depending on how next season and his fourth year go. I mean, he's recruiting better than Urban Meyer did. I mean, last year again, 5 top 10 players in the 2021 recruiting class. 5 top 10 players, according to 24/7 Sports, who has a great reputation of just being the most reliable recruiting website. It's crazy. It's insane. And not only that, he took Justin Fields from Georgia and developed him to quite possibly, kind of an unpopular opinion here, but quite possibly the greatest quarterback in the NFL draft. I think Justin Fields totally could turn out to be that, despite the Chicago Bears' troubles. I mean, and not only that, but reaching the playoff 2 years in a row, the national title in your second year with a team that is worse than the first year, taking down Clemson, who Urban could never beat for his life, 0-2 against Michigan, 0-2 against Penn State, the top 2 challengers in the East Division, beat Wisconsin 2 times in the same year, and one of those wins was a game that Ohio State was totally in contention to lose after being behind by 14 points, and through amazing leadership, Ryan Day brought them back and won that game. And he's undefeated in Big Ten play and in regular season play overall. So not only do I think his press conference, or whatever you want to call it, at the Big Ten Media Days shows me he's a great coach, that plus his record and just so far in his recruiting and so far just everything he's done, he proves to me every reason why Ohio State is elite. Ohio State focuses on just the first game, then the second game. They take it week by week. Ohio State is specific. They don't really give excuses. They don't opt out against their main rival because a great portion of their team is sick. I mean, Ohio State had a great portion of their team that was sick. And guess what? They still played Michigan State. So to me, and you can tell me in the comments below whether you really agree with this or not, but Ryan Day totally proves why Ohio State is on top of the Big Ten and is elite for now. And I say for now because you never know. Ryan Day's just entering his third year, and there have been plenty of coaches that have had great first and second years because they've ridden off the recruiting of their predecessors and the great teams their predecessors built. Larry Coker is a prime example, and then they ruined it by year 4 or 5. But for now, I don't really think that's going to happen here. I think Ohio State's on the right track. Ryan Day here, I was really impressed with him at the Big Ten Media Days. More impressed than I was with my head coach of Jim Harbaugh. Though we'll get to something in the next video of something, and you Ohio State fans may not like this, but we'll get to something that I was really impressed, or more so not impressed, but more proud of something Jim Harbaugh said. That's all I have for today on this video. If you liked this video, remember to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you can watch my videos the minute and the second they release. And comment your thoughts below. Again, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment your thoughts below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.